a wide-angle shot capturing a tender, intimate moment at dawn in a cozy Seattle apartment. Two young men, both in their mid-20s, share a quiet, emotional embrace on a worn leather couch, bathed in soft golden light filtering through a large window. One has tousled dark hair, a lean build, and a hesitant smile. The other, with short blonde hair and a muscular frame, looks at him with a mix of vulnerability and resolve. Their hands are gently clasped, fingers intertwined, with a backdrop of scattered books and coffee mugs. On a wooden coffee table, a small, naturally integrated chalkboard reads, "Love dares to rewrite our truths," in elegant white cursive, blending seamlessly into the scene without disrupting its emotional authenticity. I slept beside my straight friend and saw his morning wood. Now my world won't ever be the same. The air in the cramped Seattle apartment was thick with the scent of rain-soaked cedar and last night's cheap beer. I, Ezra Martinez, 25, lay frozen on the pull-out couch, my heart hammering so loud I swore it would wake the entire building. Beside me, sprawled under a thin blanket, was my best friend, Caleb Reed, his chest rising and falling in the soft rhythm of sleep. And there, unmistakable in the pale dawn light, was the outline of his morning wood. What do you do when the sight of something so private, so human, flips a switch you didn't know was inside you? I'd known Caleb since our freshman year at the University of Washington, two misfits bonding over late-night study sessions and a shared love for obscure indie bands. He was the golden boy from Boise, blonde, broad-shouldered, with a laugh that could charm anyone, while I was the quiet artist from San Diego, always sketching in the margins of my notebooks, my brown eyes hiding more than they revealed. That morning, as I stared at the ceiling, my mind raced. Caleb was straight. He'd dated half the women in our friend group, his charm effortless, his heterosexuality as unquestioned as the Puget Sound's tides. But there I was, my breath catching, my body betraying me with a warmth I couldn't name. Was this just a fleeting curiosity, or had I been lying to myself about who I was all along? The night before had been one of those reckless, blurry evenings. Our friend group, me, Caleb, Priya, and Jamal, had crammed into this tiny Capitol Hill apartment for a game night that spiraled into drinking and laughing until 2 a.m. When the others left, Caleb, too drunk to drive, crashed on the couch with me. Just like old times, easy, he'd slurred, throwing an arm around me before passing out. Old times meant dorm room sleepovers, platonic and safe. But this felt like crossing a line I hadn't even seen. I slipped out of the blanket, my bare feet cold against the hardwood floor, and tiptoed to the kitchen. The city was waking up outside, the hum of early traffic mingling with the drip of the coffee maker. What would Caleb think if he knew what I'd seen, what I'd felt? Would he laugh it off, or would it fracture the easy trust we'd built over years? I poured coffee, my hands shaking, and tried to focus on the mundane: grounds, water, mugs, anything to drown out the questions screaming in my head. Caleb stirred, groaning as he sat up, his hair a mess. "Morning, dude," he said, his voice gravelly. His eyes, blue as the sound on a clear day, met mine, and for a moment, I wondered if he could see right through me. "You look like you saw a ghost." I forced a laugh, handing him a mug. "Just your ugly face first thing in the morning." But as he grinned and sipped, oblivious, I felt the weight of a secret I wasn't sure I could carry. How do you tell your best friend that a single moment has made you question everything? Not just about yourself, but about the space between you. The day unfolded like any other Saturday. We grabbed breakfast at a diner on Broadway, the kind with sticky vinyl booths and waitresses who called you Han. Caleb talked about his new job at a tech startup, his words a familiar rhythm, but I was only half listening. My mind kept replaying that morning, the heat in my cheeks, the way my gaze had lingered too long. Was I reading too much into it? Or was this the start of something I couldn't ignore? By noon, we were at Pike Place Market, weaving through crowds as vendors shouted about fresh salmon and handmade candles. Caleb nudged me, pointing at a busker strumming a guitar. "Bet you could draw that guy in 10 minutes flat," he said, his grin infectious. I smiled back, but my chest tightened. How could I feel so close to him and so far away at the same time? That night, back at the apartment, Caleb suggested a movie. We settled on some action flick, but I barely registered the explosions on screen. My thoughts were a tangle of fear and longing. What would it mean to admit I might not be as straight as I'd always assumed? And what would it cost to keep it hidden, especially from the one person who'd always seen me for who I was, or who I thought I was? As the credits rolled, Caleb turned to me, his expression softer than usual. "You okay, Easy? You've been weird all day." His concern was genuine, and it hit me like a punch. Could I tell him? Should I? Or was this a truth better left buried, even if it meant living with the ache of what might have been? The question hung in the air, heavy as the Seattle fog that clung to the windows. I opened my mouth, but no words came. How do you confess a truth you're only just beginning to understand yourself? "I'm fine," I lied, my voice barely steady. "Just tired." Caleb raised an eyebrow, but didn't push. He never did. That was the thing about him. He knew when to let things slide, but his silence always felt like it saw too much. The next week was a blur of avoidance. I buried myself in my freelance graphic design work, sketching logos for a local coffee shop, but every line I drew felt like a distraction from the real question. What was I feeling for Caleb? Was it just a moment of confusion, or had I been blind to something deeper all along? I'd always identified as straight, dated women, even had a serious girlfriend in college. But now, every memory of Caleb, his laugh, his casual touches, the way he'd lean in close to share a secret, felt charged with new meaning. I needed perspective, so I called Priya, our friend from the game night. We met at a cafe in Fremont, the kind with mismatched chairs and walls covered in local art. Priya, 27, with her sharp wit and no-nonsense attitude, was the perfect sounding board. Over lattes, I spilled everything. Well, almost everything. I left out the Morningwood part, but I told her about the pull I felt toward Caleb, the way it was rewriting my understanding of myself. She leaned back, her dark eyes studying me. "Ezra, you're allowed to question who you are. It's not a betrayal of anything." Her words were kind, but they stirred a fear I couldn't name. What if this wasn't just a question, but a truth I'd have to live with? What if it changed how Caleb saw me? "Have you talked to him?" she asked. I shook my head, my throat tight. "You should. Caleb's not the type to judge." But that was the problem. What if he didn't judge but still pulled away? Losing his friendship would be like losing a piece of myself. That night, I found myself scrolling through old photos on my phone. Me and Caleb at a music festival, grinning under neon lights. Us hiking in the Cascades, his arms slung around my shoulders. Each image felt like a clue to a puzzle I hadn't known I was solving. Had I always felt this way, or was this new, sparked by that one unguarded moment? The next day, Caleb texted me to meet at a bar in Belltown. When I arrived, he was already there, nursing a beer, his flannel shirt rolled up to his elbows. The sight of him, so familiar yet suddenly so foreign, made my chest ache. We talked about nothing, work, the Seahawks, a new band he'd found, but every word felt like a tightrope walk. How do you bridge the gap between friendship and something more when you're not even sure what more means? As we left the bar, the rain started, a light drizzle that turned the streets glossy. Caleb pulled his jacket over his head, laughing, and grabbed my arm to drag me under an awning. We stood close, too close, our breath visible in the cold air. For a moment, neither of us spoke, and I wondered if he felt the same electricity I did. Then he broke the silence. "You sure you're okay, Easy? You're not yourself." I wanted to tell him. I wanted to say, "I saw you that morning, and now I can't stop seeing you." But instead, I nodded, forcing a smile. Yeah, just life, you know. He didn't look convinced, but he let it go, and we walked back to his car in silence, the rain soaking through my shoes. The next few days, I threw myself into routine, work, gym, repeat, hoping it would dull the ache. But every time my phone buzzed with a text from Caleb, my heart leapt, then sank. I was falling for him, wasn't I? And the worst part was knowing he might never feel the same. How do you love someone who might not even see you that way? The truth was a splinter under my skin, impossible to ignore. I couldn't keep dodging Caleb, but I also couldn't keep pretending nothing had changed. How do you move forward when every step feels like it could shatter something precious? I decided to test the waters. We planned a hiking trip in the Olympic National Park, just the two of us, like we'd done a dozen times before. The drive out of Seattle was quiet, the radio filling the gaps with indie rock. Caleb sang along off-key, and I laughed, but my mind was elsewhere. What if I told him? What if I didn't? Either way, I was risking the one friendship that had anchored me through every storm. The trail was steep, the air sharp with pine and salt from the nearby Pacific. We hiked for hours, our conversation light, movies, memories, the usual. But as we reached a lookout point, the world stretching out in greens and blues, something shifted. Caleb sat on a rock, catching his breath, and looked at me with an intensity one hadn't seen before. "EZ, what's going on with you?" he asked, his voice low. "You've been distant. Did I do something?" His vulnerability caught me off guard. Caleb, the guy who could charm a room, was worried he'd hurt me. How could I tell him the truth without breaking us? I sat beside him, the cold stone grounding me. "It's not you," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's me. I'm figuring some stuff out." My heart pounded, each word a step toward a cliff. Should I say more? Should I tell him about that morning? About the feelings I couldn't shake? He tilted his head, waiting. The silence was unbearable, but it was also an invitation. I took a breath. "Caleb, I think I might not be as straight as I thought." The words felt like they'd been ripped from me, raw and unsteady. His eyes widened, but he didn't pull away. Instead, he leaned closer, his hand resting on my shoulder. "Okay," he said simply. "That's okay, EZ." His voice was steady, but there was something else in his eyes. Curiosity, maybe? Or was I projecting my own hopes? How do you read someone you thought you knew inside and out? The hike back was different. We didn't talk about it, but the air between us felt charged, like the moment before a storm. Back at the car, he turned to me, his expression unreadable. "You know I'm here, right? No matter what." I nodded, but the words didn't ease the knot in my chest. What did "no matter what" mean when I was starting to want more than friendship? That night, we camped under a sky so clear it felt like the stars were watching us. Lying in our separate sleeping bags, I stared at the fire, its crackle the only sound. Caleb was quiet, too quiet, and I wondered what he was thinking. Had I said too much? Or not enough? The distance between us, just a few feet, felt like miles. The next morning, as we packed up, he bumped my shoulder playfully. "You're still you, EZ. Don't overthink it." His words were light, but they carried weight. Was he telling me to let it go? Or was he leaving a door open? How do you navigate a friendship when the lines are blurring and you're not sure where you stand? Back in Seattle, the city felt different, like it was holding its breath. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd set something in motion, and there was no going back. But what was the next step when the person you're falling for is your straight best friend? I avoided Caleb for a few days, needing space to think. But he wasn't having it. He showed up at my apartment unannounced, a six-pack of beer in hand. "We need to talk," he said, his tone firm but not angry. My stomach dropped. Was this the moment everything fell apart? We sat on the couch, the same one where it all started. He cracked open a beer, handed me one, and looked me in the eye. "Ezra, you've been avoiding me. What's going on?" His directness was disarming. How do you explain a heart that's tearing itself apart? I took a sip, the cold liquid grounding me. I told you I'm figuring things out, I said. But it's more than that. It's about you. The words hung there, fragile and dangerous. His face didn't change, but his eyes softened, searching mine. Me? He asked, his voice quiet. What about me? I could feel the edge we were teetering on, the point of no return. Should I say it? Should I tell him I was falling for him, that every moment with him felt like both a gift and a wound? I saw something that morning, I said, my voice shaking. And it made me realize I think I have feelings for you, Caleb. More than just friends. The silence that followed was deafening. His hand froze on his beer, and for a moment, I thought I'd lost him. Then he spoke, his voice low. I don't know what to say, EZ. I'm straight. But he trailed off, his eyes locked on mine. You're my best friend. I don't want to lose you. The words were a lifeline, but they also stung. He didn't feel the same, did he? But lingered, a crack in the door I hadn't expected. Over the next few weeks, we navigated a new normal. Caleb didn't pull away, but he didn't lean in either. We hung out, laughed, shared beers, but there was a new undercurrent, a tension we both felt but didn't name. I started attending a local LGBTQ support group, meeting people like Marcus, a trans artist who helped me see that my feelings didn't have to define me. They were part of me, but not all of me. One night, Caleb invited me to a concert at a small venue in Pioneer Square. The band was loud, the crowd electric, and for a moment, it felt like old times. After, we walked along the waterfront, the city lights reflecting on the water. He stopped, turning to me. EZ, I've been thinking. I don't know if I can give you what you want, but I care about you, more than I can say. His words were a confession, not of love, but of something just as real, loyalty, care, a bond that could bend but not break. I nodded, my throat tight. That's enough, I said, and I meant it. Maybe I'd always love him in a way he couldn't return, but his friendship was a gift I wouldn't trade. In the months that followed, I grew into myself, embracing my bisexuality with a quiet pride. Caleb was there, cheering me on, even when I started dating Marcus. Our friendship didn't end. It evolved, stronger for the truths we'd faced. How do you measure love? Not by what you gain, but by what you're willing to risk to be true to yourself and those you care about.